Big Shaq was waiting for his coffee, quiet, chill, when a young black girl got kicked out of a luxury car dealership across the street. She wasn't loud, she wasn't causing trouble, but the way they treated her, cold, dismissive, public. What they didn't know? Shaq saw everything, and what he did next flipped the entire city upside down. Stay till the end, because this isn't just revenge, it's a masterclass in karma. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The moment Amara pushed open the glass doors, the temperature in the luxury showroom dropped, and it had nothing to do with air conditioning. She stepped inside slowly, clutching her spiral notebook, eyes wide as they scanned the polished chrome, glass walls and rows of pristine cars with six-figure price tags. She'd been researching brands for her business class project, and this was the last dealership on her list. She barely got past the entrance before a sharply dressed salesman at the front desk raised an eyebrow and muttered to his colleague, "Lost or just curious?" Amara heard him. She swallowed hard and kept walking. She approached a sleek black Rolls-Royce and began jotting notes: model name, price range, engine type. A second salesman in a navy suit stepped into her path. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, tone dipped in suspicion. Amara looked up politely. "Hi, I'm doing a school project on premium vehicles, like comparing features, brand value, customer experience." He cut her off. "Uh-huh. And what school is that, exactly?" She blinked. "Parkview Academy. I'm in the business honors track." He chuckled dryly. "Right. And I'm guessing you're planning to buy one of these for recess?" Behind him, another staffer smirked and whispered, "She doesn't look like she can afford anything." The comment hit like a slap. Amara shifted her weight but stood her ground. "I'm not here to buy. I'm researching for a real case study." I emailed ahead. The Navy suit scoffed. "Look, sweetie, this isn't a showroom for selfies or class field trips. We don't have time to play pretend." She opened her notebook to show the printed appointment confirmation. But before she could speak, he waved her off and turned to a nearby security guard. "Can you escort her out, please?" The guard, clearly uncomfortable, gently motioned toward the door. Amara's face flushed with heat as every head in the dealership turned to watch. Her voice caught in her throat. She didn't argue, didn't cry. She walked out slowly, eyes burning, notebook clenched in her fist. The door shut behind her with a humiliating hiss. She didn't see the figure across the street leaning on the hood of a matte black SUV, oversized sunglasses on, one eyebrow raised. He'd seen the whole thing. And as Amara disappeared down the sidewalk, he pulled out his phone and dialed. Shaq muttered, "Yeah, we got a problem. I'll handle it tomorrow." Amara turned back one last time, notebook still clutched in her hands. "I really did email ahead. I just wanted to ask a few questions for my business class. This is part of my senior capstone project." The man in the navy suit, now clearly annoyed, folded his arms. "Look, kid, we've got actual buyers to help. Maybe try the used lot down the road. Might be more your speed." Laughter bubbled up behind the desk. Another salesman added, "Or the mall kiosk. I hear they sell model cars there." Amara's throat tightened. I'm not trying to waste anyone's time." He cut in, voice sharp now. "Then don't." She froze, every nerve in her body screaming to leave before tears betrayed her. She turned slowly and walked toward the exit, heart pounding, humiliation pooling in her chest like wet cement. Outside, the sun felt harsher than before. Her legs moved on autopilot, sneakers brushing against the pavement as she made her way toward the corner. Her notebook trembled in her grip, her carefully prepared notes now crumpled at the edges. But as she passed the curb, a low hum stopped her in her tracks. A sleek, ice-white Rolls-Royce Phantom was parked near the entrance, its chrome grille gleaming like a spotlight. The engine purred so quietly it was barely audible, yet somehow it commanded attention. Then, the passenger side window glided down. "Hey!" A deep, unmistakably familiar voice called out. "You okay, lil sis?" Amara turned, stunned. Behind the wheel sat none other than Shaquille O'Neal, sunglasses pushed up into his bald dome, eyebrows slightly raised with concern. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Shaq leaned toward the window. "I saw the way they talked to you in there. Thought maybe you were lost. But nah, you were standing tall. And they didn't like that." Amara blinked, voice barely a whisper. "I was just doing a project. I didn't mean to cause any—" Shaq cut in gently. "You didn't cause anything. They showed who they are. That's not on you. She nodded slowly, still stunned. He glanced at his phone. The back at her. You free tomorrow afternoon? Amara hesitated, confused. I think so. Shaq smiled just slightly. Good. I need you to dress sharp. The window rolled back up as he pulled off, leaving Amara staring after the car, completely unaware her life had just changed. Amara's feet froze as the tinted window dropped completely, and her eyes locked with the face she'd only seen on TV, sneakers and cereal boxes. Her breath hitched. Wait, are you… Shaquille O'Neal leaned forward slightly in the driver's seat of the pristine Rolls-Royce, shades lowered just enough to reveal his unmistakable gaze. Yeah, he said, voice cool and calm. I'm Shaq, but forget that for a second. He looked her over, not judging, just understanding. You okay? She nodded slowly, trying to process what was happening. I'm fine, she lied. Shaq tilted his head. Nah, you don't walk out of a place like that looking like your whole spirit got stepped on and call it fine. He paused, then asked gently, You mind telling me what just happened? Amara looked down at her sneakers. Her voice was soft at first. I went in for my senior project. I emailed ahead. I told them I was doing research on brand perception. I had questions about pricing, design, marketing, all of it. She glanced back up at him. But they didn't care. One guy said I should try the used lot down the road. The other laughed. Told me this wasn't a place for selfies. Shaq's jaw tightened. They said that to you? She nodded. And then they kicked me out. I didn't even get to ask one question. For a beat, Shaq said nothing. He looked back toward the showroom, then slowly chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You know what's wild, he finally said. I was parked here waiting on my boy to test drive a Bentley, and I saw you walk in. You held that notebook like it mattered. I knew you weren't in there to mess around. Amara blinked. You saw everything? Every minute of it, Shaq replied. The way they looked at you, the way they assumed. He tapped the steering wheel, then turned his full attention back to her. So here's what we're gonna do. Amara leaned in slightly. You free tomorrow afternoon? She hesitated. I think so. Shaq smiled. Nah, you are. Clear your schedule and dress sharp. I'm picking you up. You got a lesson to finish, and I got a point to prove. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, Amara stood on the sidewalk, stunned. For the first time all day, she smiled. The glass doors of the luxury dealership slid open with a quiet whoosh, just like the day before. But this time, the energy shifted before anyone inside even saw who was coming. Outside, a spotless white Rolls-Royce Phantom eased into the front lot like it owned the place. The chrome grille glinted beneath the sun, tires whispering against the asphalt. Every head in the showroom turned, and then the rear passenger door opened. Amara stepped out first. Gone was the oversized hoodie and sneakers. Today, she wore a navy blue blazer over a crisp white blouse, her curls pulled back in a polished ponytail, and a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Her walk? Calm, purposeful, like she belonged. Behind her, the driver's door opened, and out stepped Shaquille O'Neal. Inside the showroom, Greg, the same salesman who had laughed at her yesterday, practically choked on his espresso. Another employee whispered, That's Shaq. That's literally Shaq. Greg plastered on a nervous smile and rushed forward. Mr. O'Neal, welcome. We weren't expecting… Shaq held up a hand. Didn't smile, didn't blink. He pointed at Amara. You remember her? The room froze. Amara stood tall, saying nothing, letting the silence work its way through the staff like a spotlight. Greg's face paled. Yes, she came in yesterday. There must have been a misunderstanding. We didn't realize… Shaq cut him off. Didn't realize what? Greg stammered. That she was with someone. Shaq turned slightly. She wasn't. She came in on her own. Because she had questions. Because she's smart. And because y'all judged her the second she walked through that door. Another salesman stepped forward, trying to diffuse the tension. If we can help you today, sir, we'd be honored. You can start, Shaq said flatly, by opening up your VIP section. We've got a ghost to test drive. The request wasn't a suggestion. Greg hesitated, then nodded quickly and scurried off. The other staff followed, whispering amongst themselves as they prepped the most exclusive section of the showroom. Amara turned to Shaq, eyes wide. You didn't have to do all this. Shaq smiled for the first time. Nah, I did. Not for you. For them. As they walked toward the glass doors, customers stopped and stared. Shaq opened the door for Amar and said just loud enough to hear, "Let's see how well they listen when you ask your questions this time." The tension inside the dealership could have sliced through glass. Customers paused mid-sip in the espresso lounge. A mother stepped protectively in front of her child. Every employee stood still, pretending to look busy, but all eyes were locked on Shaq. He walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the front desk, Amara right beside him. Greg, the same smug salesman from the day before, adjusted his tie like it was choking him. "Sir, I already told you. We didn't know who she was." Shaq folded his arms. "Didn't need to. You judged her before she even said hello." Greg's voice cracked. She didn't look like she was serious." Shaq's eyes narrowed. "Serious?" He turned to the small crowd now forming in the showroom. "Let me tell y'all something. Yesterday, this young lady walked in here with a notebook, a vision, and more focus than half the people y'all roll out champagne for. And instead of offering her respect, you offered her the door." Greg opened his mouth, but no words came out. Shaq continued, louder this time. "You threw her out. For asking questions. For dressing different. For being young and black." Silence blanketed the room like fog. Then he looked down at Amara and softened. "You still want to test drive a ghost?" She nodded slowly. Her voice didn't need volume. It had weight. "Yes, I do." Greg tried to mask his discomfort with enthusiasm. "Absolutely, of course. Let me just, let me get the key fob from the vault." Another staff member, clearly uncomfortable, scurried past him. "I'll open the VIP section." Shaq raised a brow. "Now that's more like it." As they moved toward the velvet rope area normally reserved for athletes, celebrities, and billionaires, a teenage boy in the crowd whispered, "She's the coolest person here." Amara heard it. She didn't turn, but her hand gripped her portfolio a little tighter. Greg trailed behind awkwardly, still trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. "Would you like a chilled bottle of water while we wait?" Shaq turned back with a grin. "Offer it to her. She's the one leading this." Just as the ghost's polished hood came into view, a staffer whispered into Greg's ear. His face went pale. The dealership owner was on his way, and he'd seen the viral clip. Greg walked stiffly, the key fob to the Rolls-Royce ghost clutched in his sweaty palm. Every step echoed louder than it should have, because the silence behind him was thick. Shaq and Amara strolled a few feet back, not in a hurry. She wasn't intimidated anymore. This time, she owned the moment. Greg cleared his throat as they approached the car. "This is the 2024 Rolls-Royce Ghost, V12 twin turbo, 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds. Amara didn't blink. "What's the marketing strategy behind the new grille redesign? I noticed the Phantom dropped the vertical light signature." Greg stammered, caught off guard. Well, Rolls wanted to modernize without compromising legacy." She nodded. "That's what I thought." "So what's your average buyer demographic for the Ghost line? Still 55 and older, or are you seeing younger luxury consumers?" Shaq raised his eyebrows with a proud smile. Greg, now visibly sweating, tried to keep up. I think it's shifting younger." Amara stepped closer to the ghost's hood, running her fingers gently across the spirit of ecstasy. "You know, most people see this and think status. But what I see is strategy, timing, branding, restraint." A woman from across the showroom leaned toward her husband. "She's brilliant," she whispered. "Who is she?" A few customers had gathered near the velvet rope now, pretending to look at vehicles, but really their eyes were fixed on the teenage girl flipping the script on the same salesman who mocked her yesterday. Greg tried to pivot. "Would you like to sit inside, Miss?" Amara opened the driver's side door herself. "Already unlocked," she said softly, slipping into the leather seat like she'd been doing it for years. Shaq leaned against the car frame, beaming. "Comfortable?" Amara adjusted the seat back. "Feels like justice." The crowd chuckled. A soft murmur of approval rippled across the room. Greg looked like he was holding his breath. Shaq turned to the curious onlookers. "Y'all want to know the best part?" He nodded toward Amara. "Go on, tell them where your project's going again." Amara stepped out, stood tall, and delivered the words calmly. No arrogance, just quiet pride. "Harvard Business School, full ride." A few audible gasps slipped from the crowd. Greg looked like he'd just swallowed a cactus. One of the managers rushed toward them, phone in hand. "Shaq," he whispered nervously. Your video from yesterday, it just hit 4 million views. The plush leather of the dealership's VIP lounge had probably never held a moment like this. Shaq leaned back in a cream-colored armchair, legs crossed, a quiet storm in his eyes. Across from him, Amara sipped gingerly on a chilled bottle of water, still processing the whiplash of the last 24 hours. Around them, staff hovered nervously, offering lattes, bottled water, snacks no one asked for. But Shaq didn't even glance their way. You know, he said, his voice deep and steady, some folks only respect money or fame, not character. Amara looked up. Yeah, I noticed. Shaq chuckled. Thing is, you didn't flinch. Yesterday, they saw a little black girl with sneakers and a backpack and thought you didn't belong. But today, you walked in here with the same heart, and they changed. Amara blinked fast. I didn't know what to do yesterday. I wanted to say something clever, something powerful, but all I felt was small. Shaq leaned forward. Let me tell you something I've learned. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means strategy. You let them underestimate you. That's their mistake. The room fell quiet for a beat. Just the hum of soft jazz from hidden speakers and the distant sound of polished shoes on tile. Pride is power, Shaq continued. But patience? That's dominance. You didn't need to shout. You let your story speak. Amara nodded slowly, her posture straighter than before. Is that why you didn't say anything yesterday, when you saw it happen? Shaq smiled. I said nothing so I could say everything today. Timing matters, kid. Now the whole world's listening. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. You think they'll learn something from this? She asked quietly. Shaq's tone shifted. Nah, but the next girl like you, she might get treated different. That's the win. He tapped a contact labeled media guy, emergency only, and raised the phone to his ear. Yo, yeah, get the media guy ready, he said, glancing back at Amar with a grin. I've got a story to tell. And trust me, it's a good one. Across the room, Greg's face drained as he spotted a familiar news van pulling into the lot. Cameras already rolling. Shaq didn't need a production crew, just his phone and the truth. He angled the camera toward Amara, seated in the dealership's plush VIP lounge, sipping a latte like royalty. Behind her, staff scrambled like background actors in a redemption arc they didn't ask for. Then, in one smooth take, he turned the camera to himself. They judged a kid based on her shoes. Now they're giving her lattes in the VIP lounge, he said, voice calm but loaded. Let's talk about that. He hit post, tagging the dealership's official account. Within minutes, the video exploded. The comments flooded in like wildfire. This is what grace under pressure looks like. Someone get Amara a Netflix deal and a ghost. Bro, I saw how they treated her. Makes me sick. By the third hour, the clip had racked up 1.4 million views. By the eighth, over 3 million. The dealership's name trended on Twitter. Ghosted by bias and Yarsha Rolls reversed climbed the charts. TikTok teens clipped the video into edits, stitching it with slow claps and speeches from civil rights leaders. Instagram accounts reposted the clip with instant karma in bold red letters. Inside the dealership, panic had set in. Greg huddled near the manager's office, phone glued to his ear. No, I didn't say anything that bad, she looked like a prank. How was I supposed to know? In the lounge, Amara's phone buzzed nonstop. Her friend sent her links. Her school principal emailed. Someone even made a meme of her, sipping the latte with the caption, when they judged you too soon, and now they're serving you. Shaq glanced at her. You okay? Amara looked stunned but composed. This is insane. Shaq grinned. Nah, this is justice with Wi-Fi. But then, something new happened. Under the viral post, a fresh comment climbed to the top, gathering likes fast. I used to work there. This ain't the first time they pulled this. Ask about the kid in the wheelchair they followed around the Bentley section. A hush fell over the screen. That single comment opened the floodgates. More replies surfaced. Anonymous former employees, customers, even interns, sharing stories of profiling, silence, and humiliation. Screenshots of Yelp reviews resurfaced. Whispers turned into roars. A verified news reporter DM'd Shaq. We'd like to go on record. Sounds like this dealership just hit a PR iceberg. The dealership's clean, polished image didn't stand a chance once the internet turned its full attention on them. What started with one viral clip quickly turned into a digital landslide. In less than 24 hours, hundreds of Yelp reviews were posted, many of them from people who had kept quiet for far too long. Some were subtle, others scathing, but a pattern emerged fast: racial profiling, dismissive treatment, and selective service. In the comments of Shaq's post, a former employee wrote anonymously, "I used to work there. This isn't the first time they treated someone like that. It's just the first time they got caught by someone famous." That comment alone racked up over 80,000 likes and triggered a wave of messages in Shaq's inbox from customers and staff alike. One message read, "They told me I wasn't the right demographic for a test drive. I was wearing a suit." Another said, "They used to tell us who to serve first and who to ignore." It was never subtle. News outlets picked up the story faster than the dealership could react. A local reporter from Channel 5 called Shaq's publicist, requesting an interview. "We're working on a segment titled Discrimination Behind the Wheel," she explained, "and your footage sparked it." Meanwhile, Amara stayed quiet. Despite the media buzz and incoming praise, she declined all interviews. She hadn't done this for fame. Her dignity didn't need a spotlight. But she watched everything, carefully, thoughtfully, every repost, every story shared. She realized this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every kid who had walked into a place and been told without words that they didn't belong. At the dealership, the atmosphere had flipped. The same lounge that once echoed with scoffs and dismissal was now dead silent. Staff glued to their phones, nervously scrolling through the damage. In the middle of it all, Shaq took a quiet moment. He stood by the showroom window, looking out as another news van pulled up. A producer from the station approached him with a microphone. "Would you be willing to comment on what this moment means to you?" Shaq didn't even blink. His voice was low, calm, but carried the weight of someone who had seen too much to stay silent. "You ain't heard the best part yet," he said, pocketing his phone. "Stay tuned." His phone buzzed again. A message popped up on screen from a name the world hadn't heard in years, but was about to. The story was already viral, but it was about to take a turn no one saw coming. A local journalist, intrigued by how composed and media-shy Amara remained despite the global attention, decided to dig a little deeper. She cross-referenced school records, press clippings, and public scholarship announcements, until one quiet detail stopped her cold. On an archived tech philanthropy site, buried in the list of youth grant recipients, was a name she hadn't expected. Amara Jensen, daughter of Langston Jensen. The internet exploded. Again, Langston Jensen wasn't just wealthy. He was legendary. A reclusive black tech mogul who had quietly built an empire in cloud infrastructure and AI systems, walked away from the public eye a decade ago and never returned. He had no public social media, no interviews, and no flashy lifestyle. Most people didn't even know what he looked like anymore, until now. News outlets scrambled to confirm it, and within hours the truth was everywhere. The girl who had been mocked and thrown out of a luxury car dealership was the daughter of a man worth over $7 billion. But the public didn't hear it from Amara or from Shaq. They heard it from the dealership owner himself. In a video that would soon be replayed millions of times, the dealership owner, face pale, hands stiff, stood on the showroom floor in front of rolling cameras. His voice trembled slightly as he recited, "This morning, I received a phone call from Mr. Langston Jensen. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. All he said was," and I quote, he paused, then looked directly into the lens, "Thank you for revealing who you hire. It made my next steps very easy." The video panned to Greg, the salesman who had mocked Amara, standing off to the side, arms crossed and jaw clenched. The owner continued, "Effective immediately, Mr. Greg Harper and every staff member involved in the incident have been terminated. This dealership must be more than its cars. It must be accountable." Outside the dealership, a crowd had gathered. Some applauded, some filmed. One held a sign that read, "Dignity doesn't wear a price tag." Meanwhile, across town, Amara sat in her room watching the live stream on her tablet. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just whispered, "About time." Her father stepped into the room behind her, placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Let's go finish this." The next morning, the dealership lot shimmered in the early sun, its glass panels polished, its luxury models gleaming under spotlights. But the staff inside were tense. Cameras were still outside. Whispers still swirled. Then it happened. A blacked-out SUV rolled up to the entrance. Its windows were tinted darker than regulation. Security tried to move forward, but the driver gave a nod. The back door opened, and out stepped Amara, dressed in a crisp blazer and slacks, chin high, braided hair pinned back with elegance. Behind her emerged her father. Langston Jensen didn't need an introduction. He walked with quiet authority, eyes scanning the room. Not with anger, but with a level of awareness that made people straighten up instinctively. He wore no designer brands, no flashy jewelry, just presence. And that was enough. The new manager, just installed hours earlier after the firings, rushed forward with a forced smile. "Mr. Jensen, welcome. It's an honor." Langston didn't shake his hand. He simply said, "We're here for a purchase. 3 Phantoms. Custom." The manager blinked. 3? Langston nodded, gesturing toward the far end of the showroom. 1 in white, 1 in obsidian black, 1 in midnight blue. Paperwork flew. Staff scrambled. The transaction, though massive, was executed in silence. Then came the twist. Once the keys were handed over, Langston turned to his daughter and nodded. Amara stepped forward, her voice calm but clear. "We'd like all 3 vehicles delivered today, 1 to the head of the Community Outreach Center, 1 to the founder of the local STEM youth program, and 1 to Ms. Lords Gray, the retired public school teacher who helped me write my first business plan." The room froze. Even customers turned to watch. "You're donating them?" the manager asked, incredulous. Langston raised an eyebrow. "We don't buy luxury to prove our worth. We redirect it to those who've always had it, but were never seen." He turned back toward the exit with Amara beside him, but just before walking out, he paused at the doorway. The new manager, still stunned, stood frozen. Langston leaned in slightly and said, not with anger, but with weight, "Next time, don't judge a mind by its outfit." As they stepped back into the SUV, Amara's phone buzzed. A message from the White House press office. The glossy cover of Teen Visionaries Monthly hit shelves nationwide with a bold headline, "From Denied to Designed, The Rise of Amara Jensen." Beneath it, a radiant photo of Amara beamed back at the world, confident, composed, and no longer underestimated. In just 3 months, her story had turned into a national movement. She'd been flooded with internship offers, from Silicon Valley firms to international nonprofits. Harvard Business School had not only confirmed her full-ride scholarship, but invited her to co-lead a new mentorship program for underrepresented youth in finance and tech. Amara's inbox overflowed with event invitations, leadership panels, youth summits, speaking engagements. But she'd learned to say yes selectively. "Impact over applause," she'd told her dad. On a quiet afternoon, her phone buzzed. FaceTime. Shaquille O'Neal. She grinned and answered. Shaq's familiar deep voice filled the screen. "Still driving that dealership crew insane, Lil CEO?" Amara chuckled. "Nah, I'm too busy designing my own." Shaq raised an eyebrow. "Your own what?" "My own showroom, all electric vehicles, designed for inner-city mobility programs. We're partnering with a startup in Chicago." She leaned closer to the camera. "But this time, the lounge will be open to everyone, even kids doing research projects." Shaq smiled wide. "That's what I'm talking about." Later that week, Amara found herself walking through her old neighborhood, braids bouncing, head held high. Every block reminded her of who she was and who she was becoming. And then, as if destiny had orchestrated the route, she turned a corner, and there it was. The same luxury dealership, same glass doors, same polished floors inside. But something had changed. She paused across the street, just as she had that first day. But now she wasn't wearing a backpack or clutching a notebook. Today, she wore a tailored blazer with a small pin that read, "Founder." She didn't intend to go in, but the door opened anyway. A new staffer spotted her through the glass and hurried over, pushing the door open with both hands. "Ms. Jensen, if you ever need anything, our lounge is always open to you." Amara simply smiled, nodded once, and kept walking. She didn't need validation anymore. She had legacy. As she passed the showroom, the reflection in the window showed something powerful. Not just her image, but her impact. And the young girl behind her, holding a Teen Visionaries magazine, whispering to her mom, "That's her." Fade out.